All right, here we go. Week 12, part 2 episode. We're going to run through another 30 players. Let's get it going. I think something called hype points got enabled for me. So if you guys think this video is hype, hit it. Let's start off with Brian Thomas Jr. He's out for another week. We talked before about how I really wasn't planning on starting him anyways for these past couple of weeks. And I thought he'd be out for prolonged absence with this high ankle sprain. Seems like that's causing him a lot more issues. Parker Washington, if you really need someone to plug in, possible option there. Bucky Irving, talked about before, how I'm not really going to talk about him anymore, but I will say language is encouraging, and I do think he returns this season. I think he returns week 13, but that's about all I'll say on that. Godwin is coming back this week, and it'll be really exciting to see how he plays. I know I haven't been high on him all season, but dude, I'll be really happy if he goes off. We'll see how he plays with that fibula issue on the same ankle that he had an ankle dislocation for. He returned back earlier this season and didn't put up great numbers, so we'll see if that's changed now. I'm excited to see how he plays. Brandon Aiyuk, we had some real drama erupt that they voided his guarantees, so realistically, I don't see him coming back this season. He was on my do not draft list. He had that multi-ligament injury. It seems like he's been doing well in his recovery. I'm not sure if it's the injury or if it's the stuff with the team that's preventing him from coming back, but either way, it doesn't look good in that regard. Omarion Hampton is off to the side practicing. He is eligible to return after this bye week. There's not that much information on him since they are on bye, but it does seem like he's ramping up. Decent hold at this point. Jayden Reed also had his window activated, as we talked about earlier this week and the last couple of weeks. I've been anticipating him coming back. I do think he should provide flex value coming off of that collarbone fracture and that Jones fracture repair. The collarbone was the rate limiting step here, not the Jones fracture. He should already be recovered from that. Trey Benson was ruled out this week. He was looking pretty good on practice, though, so I would expect him to be back next week and hopefully able to insert in your lineup week 13, which is, I think, around the time. Maybe I said week 12, week 13, but around the time I expected him. I do think he should be a viable starter. Garrett Wilson re-aggravated that knee injury. They called it a knee sprain with the way that he landed. It sounds like it's a PCL injury, as we've seen really increase across the league these past couple seasons. You should hold him because he's someone who can give you value. I just don't know if he'll come back this fantasy season, but I do think that he is someone that you should be holding in your roster. Rhamondre Stevenson returns this week, so he will cut into Treveyon Henderson's time, but I do think Treveyon Henderson has forced at least an equal time split. We'll see how Vrabel handles that. Rhamondre Stevenson will likely be a little bit limited with that toe as well, so I would expect Treveyon to be another solid start. I would keep a hold of Rhamondre, just seeing how he performs this week and even next week, because, like I said, he could still be playing a little bit injured this week. Jackson Dart, we talked before about how, based on his concussion history, I did not expect him to play this week, and he ended up getting ruled out. He's got about a 50% chance of returning next weekend. I would lean, maybe 55%. I would lean towards him playing, but with how many checks he's had this season, really can't be sure. Terry McLaurin, another guy who I said, if he's active, he's a solid play. He's already off, practicing the side and all that. So if he's active, you got to play him. He's not someone I'll drop because there's a chance he comes, like, whenever he's back, he will be a contributor. So don't drop Terry McLaurin. Dalton Kincaid, the Bills need him, especially with them healthy scratching Keon Coleman each week. So he should be back, I would say, in about 1 to 2 weeks with that hamstring injury. Isaiah Pacheco was ruled out again. We talked about before how he has a grade 2 MCL injury. It's about a 5 to 7 week recovery. So in his absence, Hunt is like a decent flex. He's not like a high-end flex, but someone that you can throw in there. Drake London has a PCL sprain. He doesn't have his quarterback, Penix, so these PCL sprains we've talked about before really can hinder a player. I know it's like different. I just said Garrett Wilson is worth the hold. I mean, Drake London is definitely worth a hold. Don't drop him or anything like that. But as soon as the PCL sprain broke and Penix's knee injury, I was saying to trade Drake London. I don't think you probably can anymore. Most deadlines have passed. But if you can, yeah, I'd be trading Drake London. I don't think he'll be great even when he comes back. And we don't know when he's coming back. Joe Burrow was ruled out this week after logging a full practice. So that was interesting. The writers on the wall, I put it on a story last night that he wasn't stretching with the quarterbacks at practice yesterday. He was off to the side, so indicating he wasn't going to suit up, unfortunately. I would say that Joe Burrow should be back I would lean towards next week, but if not, the week after that. Definitely someone who should be back for the fantasy football playoffs, though. Early ahead of schedule, kind of crazy. Not really sure how that happened, but we'll see. He definitely risks re-injury. Anyone risks re-injury with any injury, but when you're returning back a month early from an injury, that required surgery, a grade 3 injury, I mean, you have an increased risk of repeat injury. Sam Laporta had back surgery. We talked about before in my shorts. I think it's more so probably a stress reaction that was borderlining on a stress fracture in the back. Could also be a disc herniation, but the spondylolysis is more common in football athletes. He should be back fine within a couple months, about like 4 months, but not for this fantasy season. So you can drop him if you think about that. Kayshon Boutte, he returns with that hamstring injury. It looks like it was a grade 1 hamstring. He missed about 2-3 weeks, so right around that time period that I would expect him back. Bhayshul Tuten, he had an ankle injury, looked like an eversion injury, but he logged limited practice all week. Etienne also logged limited practice all week. Both are off the injury report. Honestly, I think they're both playing a little limited, but they split pretty well last time. I'd be okay starting either of them in a flex spot. Maybe back end RB2. That would kind of be where I would be thinking. Nico Collins had a rib injury in Thursday Night Football. We have to see how he practices. He didn't get any receptions in that second half or targets, so I think he was pretty bruised up from that. So we have to see how he practices. Could be limited or could be not practicing at the beginning of the week. Marvin Harrison Jr. was ruled out for his second week. That puts him right around the time period that most football players miss, 1 to 2 weeks. I would expect him back next week, or if not, the week after, definitely, after this appendicitis. We'll see, though. Hopefully he stays within that timeline. No significant limitations if he returns back in 2 weeks, but 1 week back, I would expect him to be a little bit limited. Jaylen Warren we talked about before on the shorts that he had an inversion injury. I called him Tyler Warren. A lot of people gave me shit about that. Sorry. But yeah, Jaylen Warren had an inversion injury. He's logged practices all week. He's active. Should be okay. Jalen McMillan had a neck injury. Probably not back this season. If he does, it would be like week 15 through 17 or something like that. Not a long-term injury concern, but definitely something that I wouldn't expect him to be contributing that much this season. And I said that in the preseason pretty much. Aside from that, Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to play this week. He's really been arguing to play. These non-displaced, mild wrist fractures respond pretty well to just a short-term immobilization of about a week, and then after that, you're good to go. They're definitely going to make sure that that wrist is securely protected, but I would expect Aaron Rodgers to play this week. Joe Mixon, news broke that he's not going to be back this season. He was on my do not draft list in the preseason. Seems like he has a pretty significant midfoot injury. It seems like it was a non-football injury, so a lot of kind of context around that. Yeah, I wouldn't expect Mixon to be here. If you have him in your roster slot, and you have someone else, I'll drop him for sure. Kenneth Walker is good to play. He's been in an awful timeshare with Charbonnet, so if you have to start him, you can start him. He should get you some points. Darren Waller had that pec injury. Pec injuries are usually season-ending injuries, so it's actually very encouraging that even from the start they said it wasn't a season-ending injury. Should be back around week 13 to 15. I would stash him in my IR slot or even on the bench because tight ends are kind of hard to come by, and he should be a decent plug-and-play. Mike Evans, he should be back around week 16. Kind of hard to justify keeping him unless you are in dire need of a wide receiver and you think you're still going to make a deep run in the playoffs. But yeah, he had that collarbone fracture and he got surgery on it. So 8 weeks out puts him at week 16 about. Brenton Strange is questionable. You should start him if you don't have a top 7 tight end because he should put up points. He had that hip injury. It was a pretty long absence, so it's probably a partial quad tear. But yeah, Lamar Jackson, people have been asking if he's injured just because he's been playing badly and he's had an ankle injury, a hamstring injury, missing practices. I don't know. I don't think he's playing through injury so much. I think it just might be gameplay and just like line play and stuff like that. But it doesn't, I don't know. I don't really think it's an injury for him. Adrian Hill, the referee that got knocked out with a possible Achilles. So something happened to one of my friends recently where it was a textbook Achilles mechanism. He felt the pop, felt weakness, but it ended up not being the Achilles. There's a plantaris tendon back there that runs adjacent to the Achilles, much smaller tendon, not quite as involved, and it's like a vestigial tendon, meaning it doesn't really serve a huge purpose. So when you feel pop and it's not the Achilles, sometimes it's that. But yeah, he should be back in a couple weeks. Samaje Perine returns. That kind of pulls down Chase Brown's value a little bit, but Chase Brown is still a start. Emeka Egbuka had an illness, and he is scheduled to play. We talked about before, those illnesses are usually viral gastroenteritis or viral stomach illnesses. Should be good to go without any significant limitations. Jayden Daniels, they said about a 5-week absence is projected, so I would say probably in another 3 weeks he should be back, but they could shut him down with him being 3-8. CJ Stroud had concussion, and he should be back in about a week.